It is an honor to be here. And no matter what was seen on television, nothing beats being on the ground to see this for ourselves.
Amen.
The Millions More movement, we feel, should unite that which W.E.B. Du Bois called the talented tenth to the mass struggle of our people. Our scholars, our learned people are hidden away in their professions and in corporate America with no real tie to the struggle of our people who need to take advantage of the great educational scholarship that black men and women have attained to in this country. We are, without a doubt, the most educated black people on the planet, and we are blessed to get out of the American economy nearly $750 billion a year. We are not poor, we're disconnected. And once we can make the connection, then we have to accept responsibility to do our part, and through proper and effective organization, force the government to do its part. Coming on the ground, I thank Brother Ron Daniels, I thank Brother M. Tangalizi and Dr. M. Tangalizi and Dr. Leonard Dunston, and all who are responsible for inviting me, because I came to listen and to learn. I have listened and I am learning, and now I must process what I've heard so that out of that can come some answers. Already there are answers, but the Millions More movement is going to make this area the centerpiece of the movement itself. If we cannot unite the scholarship in Black America with the masses of Black America to focus on this area, then the movement is of non-effect and of no real value to the masses of our people. So this is an opportunity and a challenge. And what God does for human beings, sometimes in a problem, He gives us an opportunity through solving it to advance ourselves and our people. This is seriously a problem of tremendous magnitude that we need the help of each other and the help of God to solve. And so I just wanted to say that I am committed, and we are committed in the Millions More movement to this area. This is a fight. You're not going to get what you desire because of kindness and mercy and beneficence from those in power. You can forget that. They've already planned to take this city over and leave black and poor people out. Amen. You can come back with your music, you can come back with entertainment, but you are not to come back to this city to live. And the fact that we don't have a list of where our people are scattered in 44 states, that we can make it possible for Iraqi citizens of America to vote in an Iraqi election, yes, but we are not trying to make it possible for those evacuated from this great city to vote in the upcoming election. Yes, now the congressperson, who is our advocate, who is the person responsible for bringing members of Congress here to a hearing, he's under attack. So if you lose your mayor, you lose your congressman, then and the city council will change.
Yes, sir.
then this will be a white city.
Yes, sir.
Instead of a multinational, multicultural place. And I want to lift my voice to warn the government of the United States of America and the rich people of this city. Remember my words, because you will face them. If you do what you plan to do, to dislocate the poor of this city and never give them the right to return to be a part of a new New Orleans, I can guarantee you from God Himself that whatever you rebuild will be destroyed within the next few years, because God Himself is angry with the way the poor are being treated by the government of the United States of America. And I'm just going to close with this. I didn't intend to say anything, but that's difficult for me.
That's all right, Minister.
Because I do want to listen. But let me say this. You know, we say we're in a Christian, Judeo-Christian country, but I wonder, do we really believe what's written? Jesus said that God is going to separate nations according to a certain formula and destroy nations for a certain formula. What is that formula? The disciples said, Master, when were we hungry, you hungry, and we fed you not? When were you naked and we clothed you not? When were you out of doors and we gave you not shelter? And when were you sick and imprisoned and we ministered not unto you? And he said, inasmuch as you have not done these things to the least of these my brethren, you have not done it also unto me. And that becomes the yardstick by which the government of New Orleans, the state government of Louisiana, and the federal government of the United States of America is now being measured by God. And there will be an appropriate response. You have the power to make this right. And if you don't make it right, God Himself will make it right, but it will be wrong for you when you see the destruction that He has already planned for this area. This is not the last that you're going to see. This is the first of many great ones coming to this coast. Mark my words, write it down. Whether I'm living or dead, you will face this from God Himself. Do right by the people and save yourself. Do wrong by the poor and you've signed your own death warrant. Amen. Thank you for listening.
Amen.
I just want to say something special. This is an icon in our community. This is a piece of history. Cultural warrior, civil rights veteran, a history maker in this town. With deep love, my brother, welcome. Brother Jerome.
I would like to humbly say thanks.
Thank you, brother.
I'd like you very much to know there's a tremendous absence here today. I stayed in New Orleans during the hurricane for some 18 days. I lived in the Treme Community Center. There is a presence in this town that wear the big pants. We call these boys the big pants boys. And sometimes their mouth shine with the reflections of the gold. But the city has not honored their contribution. And I must make an effort to speak to their value. When there was no police coming into our streets to bring diapers to our babies and mosquito spray and cream for our babies. These young boys who resides on the corner of our cities and sometimes violates some of the rules, the social rules. But somewhere in their poison, they answer to the voice of no sound. The voice of no sound is the God that lives in thee. Come on. And they came when no one else was there. That's right. Young brother. There was no lights on the streets. Our babies had nothing to eat. They broke into Winn-Dixie, America, not to loot. Come on. Come on. Not to loot, but to serve. One group came with an air mattress with plywood on top and held together by rope. Come on. And they came down the streets with several of these air mattresses, like a spiritual second line to save lives. And they said they were looters. That's not true. We were back on the overpass near Galvin Street. There was no National Guard. They said, Big Duck, you look good, but you old. We can handle this. That's my nickname with the children. And they dove into this water and went into houses to rescue. But listen at this. Their tremendous organizational abilities off the street corner. There was this old lady. They went into the house. One went in, lift her up, walk a distance and passed her on. And guess what? She did not touch the water. I'm not speaking about what I was told. I'm speaking about what I witnessed. And this presence reminded me of a moment in Montgomery, Alabama, the night before the Freedom Ride, the night before we were going into Mississippi. It's all right, and Dr. King was at this house with us, and we was planning to go into Mississippi. And we were wondering how we were going to be received in Mississippi. And going into Mississippi, passing through the fields on the bus before we were arrested and sent to jail, we saw these hands waving. It was black hands of black field workers. Now, for them to raise that hand and welcome us in, they became what is the anchor of the Christian church, the cross, in that sense. Because if that hand was recognized by the white eyes, they would die. They put themselves up to give us a cushion for participation, just like these young boys did during Katrina, put themselves up. See, Christian ministers, the crucifixion is not stagnated in time behind us. It's every day of our life. When these young men came, and this day the city treats them as a non-entity. That's true. But those boys represent the spirit of Malcolm X. They are Malcolm and Martin's children. Yeah, you're right. And there's no language present there speaking but to them. But when the value of their mother's wound was threatened, somewhere in their mother's wound, in their creation, when they heard a heartbeat, you know, no one, I did not send them out there. I did not organize them. They was born with that, and this country destroyed it. tried to destroy it, tried to destroy it, tried to destroy it. But when the Holy Spiritualness of their existence was at stake, they stood up without the National Guard, without the police. They came out of spirit that's more ancient than time. More ancient than time. Now guess what else is missing? Guess what else this country don't care about? Guess what else the commission is not speaking about? The reason that I'm here, because I done been to 18 cities. Our children are not here. And if the children don't come, the city will die. The children are not here, and they don't want them here, because it is simple. It is simple to say, if this school here is not opening, why don't we have a dormitory where they can come in town and wait for their parents? They could live in this building and then go to school in this building. If you want them here, but they don't want them here. You know, so we and our children are scattered throughout the country. So some way, somehow, we have to save. We have to find a way to save it to them. The adults must save. Again, the essential moment in terms of the Christian ministry and the Islamic ministry, the essential moment in our existence, to me, one of the symbolisms in the Christian church, which is universally spiritually accepted, is when the wise men symbolically brings gift to the Christ child. Because in bringing that gift, in bringing that gift, symbolically, it says that we feed the baby to enhance the potential of the baby, who will indeed achieve that potential and bring us to deliverance. Now, if we don't bring the children in here, we cannot be delivered. We have to touch every city. We have to tell everybody we want our children back first. Forget about the buildings. Forget about everything. We want our children back. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank Pastor Watson for hosting us all here, being so generous with his hospitality. Thank you. And I want to thank especially Minister Farrakhan for coming to support us in these epic struggles that we face. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you to your representatives, Minister Harold, Minister Willie, for all of their help and support and leadership. And lastly, I want to thank Ron Daniels and M. Tangalizi for convening such an august body of important leaders who can carry this message and provide us with help, support, expertise, and inspiration. I think M. Tangalizi wanted me to speak a little bit about the election, but if I could take a moment to share with you some of my observations on what is really going on here. Shortly after the Katrina struck, the self-anointed civic elite, the descendants of the Confederate gentry, who run this city, really, who make and control all the money, hatched a very diabolical and cynical social engineering plan. I call it the Dallas Plan. They called a meeting in Dallas on September the 8th. They summoned their mayor to validate it. And on September the 8th, they came up with a plan for this Bring Back New Orleans Commission, which has been operating as a de facto government. The commission itself is wholly illegitimate. 4 of its 17 members do not even live in New Orleans, have never made a commitment to live here. 3 of those 4 make all of their living here, but they don't respect the city enough to make it their home. That social engineering agenda includes removing as many black people and poor people as possible, retaining the minimum number to work low-skilled, sub-union wage jobs in the service industry, But they have been successful in transforming this objective into a prevailing assumption that unfortunately has guided all of the public discussion up until this point. Something that we need to pay close attention to. Just recently, 2 days ago, the State Ethics Board, to its credit, ruled that the Bring Back New Orleans Commission was subject to the State Ethics Code, which means they are required to hold public meetings. It means every piece of paper they generate is a public record. We got a right to see it. We have a right to know what they've been up to. That's right. And we need to exercise that right before it's too late. Now, this plan that they have suggested on shrinking the city's footprint that you've all heard so much about, the members of this commission have direct economic interests in shrinking the footprint. They've been speculating, buying property all over the place. And we need to hold them to account, apply the state code of ethics, give them a little bit of their own medicine. Now, I think M. Tangalizi wanted me to give a brief update on the election. For those of you who don't know, those of you who have been so kind and generous to visit with us and help us here, we had a municipal election scheduled for the first week in February. An election for mayor, council, sheriff, clerk, parochial offices. All of the local officials were up. Shortly after Katrina struck, rather than do all they could to locate everybody displaced and make plans to have a free and fair election on schedule or as close to schedule as possible, they canceled the election. Didn't set another date. Canceled an election date uncertain. Very un-American, isn't it? Well, in Haiti just recently, Dr. Daniels, I know you're quite familiar with that. They had an election scheduled for January 9th, I believe. And they had some very real problems with holding that election on schedule. 2 weeks before the election, only 1/3 of the voters had their voter ID cards. None of the poll workers had been identified and trained. But even though the Haitian Electoral Commission, a nonpartisan commission, decided that in order to have a credible election, they had to wait, get everything together, make sure everybody had a chance to vote. Our Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, and her under-henchman, Nicholas Burns, said that the Haitians had to have the election on schedule, or it would have no credibility. I don't know what the difference between Haiti and New Orleans is. I do know that the federal government spent $121 million of your and my tax dollars in order for expatriate Iraqis to vote absentee in their 2 elections. So it would seem to me that there might be resources available, 1, to hold an election as close to schedule as possible, and 2, to identify all of the displaced people, find out where they are, and guarantee and ensure their right to determine who guides this city in this very critical time. The current state of affairs is the election is postponed, date uncertain. They hope to have it on April 29th. But it doesn't seem like there's a great deal of civic determination to hold an election or to find displaced people. There is a great deal of civic determination to hold a Mardi Gras celebration. There's no great deal of civic determination to open enough schools so people can come home, so children can return, Brother Jerome, so our families and communities can be restored. But they do have the civic determination to evict displaced people out of hotels so they can have people come for a Mardi Gras celebration to confirm and validate a social caste system that excludes us. There's a great deal of civic determination to shrink the footprint, to transform this city into something very different, something that disrespects our culture, our heritage, all that people have struggled for here, the special and unique place that New Orleans holes in the hearts of people around the world. I say if they're going to make it something like that, then they'll have no New Orleans at all. It'll be over my dead body, because that's not a city worth saving or worth living in. I want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you for your prayers and your support. Again, thank you, Minister Farrakhan, for your inspiration. Thank you, Ron Daniels, for convening us. Thank you, M. Tangalizi, for making it happen. And thank you, Pastor Watson, for hosting us.
Pastor Watson, Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Brother M. Tangalizi, Brother Ron Daniels, distinguished panelists. I am Minister Robert Muhammad. I serve as the Southwest Regional Representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in the state of Texas, where we're headquartered in Houston. The Southwest region encompasses Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Arkansas. I am a bit nervous because I don't feel worthy to be up here speaking while my big brother, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, is here. But I'm going to do the best I can because he would want me to speak the truth and to represent what God has blessed me to learn under his tutelage and his leadership, and for him to know that what he has sacrificed over the last 50 years has not been in vain, that there'll be young brothers and sisters that will come up out of the ranks of those who he has taught to lead, teach, and guide our nation through the dark times that are to come. So that is why I'm up here reluctantly, but I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm also the president and CEO of Action Community Development Corporation in Houston, Texas. Action is an acronym which means accepting challenges to improve our nation. Our motto is improving our nation one neighborhood at a time. With that being said, in the aftermath of Katrina and the clarion call, the Macedonian call, if you will, put out by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that we come to assist our people, Action is proud to announce that we have helped of our Louisiana brothers and sisters over 1,300 families with food, clothing, and basic needs, including rental assistance. We are providing currently case management for, on a weekly basis, of 130 families. We're offering counseling services every Tuesday at Mars 45 for at least averaging 90 persons weekly, including youth services in terms of art therapy, where the children can express themselves by using art. We have adopted 4 apartment complexes through our outreach services, and we're presently looking after about 110 of our elderly at Big Bass Resort. We also have provided workshops for money management, because if FEMA is going to give our brothers and sisters $26,000 or $2,000, if you don't know how to manage $2,000, you sure won't know how to manage $26,000, and they will spend up all of the money. They are trying to blame now in Houston our brothers and sisters from New Orleans for the spike in crime, even though there was crime before our brothers and sisters got there from New Orleans. In fact, during one week, there were 8 murders that they were crying and screaming about before those murders were committed by one man who murdered his own family. In other words, there's no quantitative data to justify the request for FEMA for more funds, for more policing, is particularly in the multifamily housing units in Houston, Texas. To come, we have also been doing conflict resolution intervention in some of the high schools in Houston, and we've got to do a better job of that. Coming up over the next 2 months during Black History Month and also going into March, we've got what we call ghetto math. Not math, but ghetto math, M-A-F-F, ghetto math, where this is the only occasion where you find that 7713, which is the area code of Houston, plus 504, which is the area code of New Orleans, will equal 1. Because we cannot allow our enemy to paint the New Orleans people as the problem for Houston, and we cannot allow the people in Houston who already had 25,000 homeless people, 25,000, Houston is known as the 7th meanest city in the country when it comes to how they treat the homeless. We also had over 25,000 people waiting for Section 8 vouchers before our brothers and sisters from New Orleans came, and the list was frozen for 5 years by HUD. And so what we need to understand is that In 2001, we had Allison. We had the similar flooding to what took place in New Orleans, I want you to understand. And the people in New Orleans, including their children, have not been made whole because FEMA left a lot of churches, community-based organizations, and the city of Houston with a bill. So what you see in the conflict in the children in schools is not so much the children, it is juvenile and adolescent jealousy and envy, but it's reflective of the discussions that are going on at home with the parents saying them people came here, but they ain't doing nothing for us and ain't did nothing for us, so you have this problem. I also, through the inspiration of Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, had went back to school after 25 years after graduating from college, where I met him in 1976 in Hampton Institute. I went to Hampton Institute. I don't know what this Hampton University, I don't know what's going on there. I went to Hampton Institute. That's where I graduated from. And yes, at Hampton Institute, Minister Farrakhan was allowed to come on the campus and to interact. This Hampton University is a whole different animal now. But the point I wanted to make in saying that is that, thank you, Action also is paying tuition for 4 students to attend daycare and school for their mothers so that the mothers can go out to seek employment and attend school for their GED. And we're also opening up our office to allow them to do job searches and training them on the internet and doing other things. A whole lot more that's going on. You're going to ding me? My time's up? Okay, yes sir, I'm wrapping up. I've been inspired to go back to school, and I have achieved my master's in urban planning and environmental policy from Texas Southern University, Mickey Leland Barbara Jordan School of Public Affairs, where I specialize in community development and housing, particularly in land use, eminent domain, deed restrictions, and zoning. What I would like to say to you here in New Orleans as an outside observer, your brother, but yet I'm outside of this, is that there's a seven-step process. I'll just briefly name it. You got to have your background and history of what has gone on. You got to set goals and objectives. You got to have alternatives or options to achieve those goals or objectives. You got to plan your implementation of those alternatives and objectives, and then you've got to implement it, which is the 5th step of the planning process. The 6th step is an evaluation. The 7th one is to make adjustments on what you evaluated. Let me just kind of wrap up with the first part. In terms of the background and history, we've got to tell the truth regardless of whom or what. Whether the truth strikes black or white, we cannot romanticize. If we are angry with Mayor Nagin, then so be it. If we're angry with Blanco, then so be it. If we're angry with the federal government, then so be it. But we've got to tell the truth that this city was dysfunctional before Nagin. The planning process was corrupt and full of cronyism before Nagin. And if you're going to have a city that's based upon a master plan, that the charrette comes from the people and their testimony as to what kind of city that they want, then you got to fix the planning process in this city so that the people's will is implemented in the master plan. But if city council persons, once the professional planners have advised in terms of the land use it takes place, if the city councilmen have veto power over what goes on in their area to adjust and overcome what the professional planners are telling you, and the process is not transparent, the process is not fair, the process is not equal for all, then brothers and sisters, if we can replace Mayor Nagin, we can replace the whole regime. But if you don't fix the system, then all we're doing is setting a black head on a white reality. Right. And if we don't get these people who are here that got themselves dug in like ticks on an Alabama hound dog, if we don't pluck them off and get this thing straight for our people. Last thing I want to say, Brother Jerome, I was feeling Brother Jerome when he was talking about bringing the children back. But why bring them back to an educational system? Hear me well. That the only thing, look, your population is only 3% Hispanic. In Texas, we have a lot more because they're the ones who make up our beds and clean our toilets and cut our grass and do the construction work. But in New Orleans, your population is only 3%. That means that you were doing the cleaning the toilets and doing all the things, the maid services and doing the cooking and whatnot. Right. So what that says is you had an educational system that reflected only menial labor. And that's all they ever wanted you for. If you want an educational system, then make this city more than a tourist destination, because a tourist destination ain't nothing but a third world country. And this ain't no third world country. We need to upgrade technology, everything in this city, so that it reflects the intelligentsia that's here and provides a future for our people other than waiting on white folks on their table.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, family. And Black Power. Black Power. Black Power. Black Power. Black Power. Black Power. We do have the power as black people to change what's going on here. That's right. Okay, today we got on our suits and boots. We sat down since Thursday, we put our black, dress suits on, and we listened to good counsel from our elders. It says in the scriptures, older people for war. Older people for counsel, young people for war. Well, the new Black Panther Party, I'm also a member of the Nation of Islam, the Black United Front, anything that's good and strong for our people. Brother Robert's been my teacher. Minister Farrakhan is an honor to stand before you. But one thing I want to say, I'm a revolutionary, but I'm also a real estate agent. No, I'm serious, because we talk about power, but we got to deal with the land.
I'm saying, free the land.
No, I'm saying, I'm a real estate agent.
Free the land.
Okay, you know what? Sister Queen, she's the chair of New Orleans. She's a teacher. She has a school, and she started in her own house. A tree fell through her house during Katrina. Guess what? I was born right here at Charity Hospital. But my family divorced. So I've been raised back and forth between Houston and New Orleans all my life. I know the power of black people. I know the intelligence. We need to declare today, we need to give us a deadline, 30-day deadline, to declare a state of Black America emergency and get all of our thinkers and our young people and give us some working orders, some marching orders, because you know what? When the storm came, we thought it was just Hurricane Katrina. And then everybody was coming to the dome and they was telling us, the government turned their back on us. The young brother said they pushed boats and got people out, the men, got the women out and the children out. The bus drivers came crying at the mosque. They said for the first 3 days, FEMA hired them and would not allow black people on the bus. They evacuated the white folks for the first 4 days. And they put all the black people in Astrodome. And the black policemen, we went to city council and asked them where all the white folks at. I've been in New Orleans all my life. That's 70-80% black. Where all the white people at? You know what? A black police officer. I'm in full uniform. We in full uniform. He pulled us to the side. He said they all at the Hilton. See, white folks took care of their own. We have to take care of our own. I don't care about FEMA. We got all the intelligence. We don't need them. What about us? I keep hearing our people say they don't want us to come back. Who is they? What about us? We need to stand up. We need to stop being elitist amongst ourselves. We need educators, but we need soldiers. We need the youth. We need the children. How about we got Saturday school on economics? Why don't the black church, which is the anchor in our community, we can have schools 5 days a week in the church. Get our teachers to come. Let's put our own money together. Let's give us a 30-day deadline. Let's call everybody we can. Oprah, you gave them people 17 whatever million. Give us $1 million for people's education and rebuild it for our own self. I don't want to go another 30 days, 40 days, this conference, and this here conference, and this here conference, and we don't have a plan that's tangible that we can go back and tell our people. 50 of my family members came to Houston. My dad, he lived across the river. He sold his house. It sold in 3 weeks. Okay? My other family member, they had homes in the East. These are educated people that's unemployed now, going from being your own business person to having to work for a minimum wage in Houston. So what we have to do is we got to stand up, because you know what? I know it's only us that's going to stand with God, of course, is behind us, but if we don't stand up, we looking foolish in God's eyes. Okay. And the youth are looking at us. I don't want to feel hopeless or helpless. And we got the power right here. That's right. So that's all I want to say is black power. Black power. All power to the people. All power. I'm a Muslim, but I know there's some good white folks. Is that the such thing to say? I know that's kind of southern to say, but how come the council, the Congressional Black Caucus, wait 4 or 5 months to come down here? Okay? We can't wait on these people. We got to hold them to the fire. All right.
Thank you very much.
Very important. We did evacuations when FEMA wouldn't. We didn't have a dime.
Let them tell them that.
You're telling that.
Could you make it brief?
Very brief. It's very key.
Very brief.
This is all I want to say is that we got to do for self. We actually went in down with the Millions More movement, and it is a movement.
That's
what
right.
we got to understand, the new Black Panther Party, coming from Brother Malik Zulu Shabazz, who talked to Mr. Farrakhan and had the full support of the Nation of Islam. We got to put boots on the ground and understand that the hurricane season is coming back, and I challenge every black man here in the city of New Orleans, the regional minister of defense of the new Black Panther Party. It's time for us to organize our own survival and rescue teams, because no one's going after our people. For 4 days, we sat around and watched this.
Okay.
So it's time for the Army to get together and begin to organize strategic plans to go in there and save our people, man. And stop waiting for other people to come save us, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're not playing games, man. Black Power.
Thank you. Montague.
Good afternoon. How y'all doing? Esteemed panelists. Wow, I mean, this is a powerhouse up here. I'm not Tracy Harris. I'm Tanya Harris. Tracy Harris is my sister. She had to leave. We do represent ACORN, the Lower Ninth Ward chapter of ACORN, with lifelong Lower Nine residents. Y'all saw the Lower Ninth Ward. You understand what happened down there. You understand that and it's not just property that was lost. Every week I'm fielding at least 200-300 calls from my neighbors who want to know how to get back home. You know, a lot of issues have been raised and people may not understand all the other aspects of getting help and assistance, but they want to come home. And ACORN actually, we got together because, you know, ACORN is the people, it's its members. Its members run the organization. And when the members spoke up, they said, what are we going to do? What you going to do? What are we going to do to get people back home? And the first thing that we thought of is actually getting these houses cleaned out. Ain't nobody helping. I mean, let me just tell you, the insurance companies are stalled out, the city's stalled out, the federal government's stalled out. Nobody's helping anybody do anything. And we initiated a program to, as a matter of fact, last Saturday, we gutted our 200 house for free. We're gutting houses in this city for free. Because that's an initial step to get our people back in. Our people are discouraged and think there's nothing left for them. I mean, when you first see the Lower Ninth Ward, when I first saw, you know, what I call my precious Lower Nine, when I first saw it, I was amazed. I couldn't understand. I stopped taking pictures. I just stood there and, oh, my jaw dropped. There are some viable structures still left in the Lower Ninth Ward. And there's some viable structures left all over the city. And we're not just gutting houses in the Lower Ninth Ward, just to make that clear. It's all over the city. We're going to try to help our people to get back home as soon as possible. And as far as actions being taken, we are tired of talking to city officials that are extreme, well, basically impotent. There's nothing that they can actually do. We're taking our message actually February 7th through the 9th to Washington, D.C. We have a bus ride that we're taking. I mean, we are ready to roll out and bring this message to Washington, D.C. to let people know exactly on national level. When I talk to people on national level, they have no idea what is really going on in the city of New Orleans. They don't know what has happened to our people. And this sister back here, when she said, you know what I'm saying, that my parents lived through Betsy, we were back, well, you know, we're lifelong Lower Niners. And we know what happened, and we understand that was, I mean, we didn't suffer from anything that happened naturally. This was a man-made disaster, and we feel this very strongly. Thank you, Minister Farrakhan. Thank you, Brother Minister. We appreciate that. But like I said, if anybody in this room who is from New Orleans, who has property in New Orleans, who needs the services of ACORN, we open our arms to you. We welcome you. Come 1024 Elysian Fields, sign, get your waiver signed, your questionnaire signed, and we'll get in there and clean that house out and get you past the first step of getting back to the city of New Orleans. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
I have some very practical suggestions here, and I think they're meant for all of you New Orleanians, as well as others who can be helpful. I want to give you some context of the kind of work I'm doing. In the next decade, there are going to be 123 new cities built in China. And one reason I couldn't come last night to the events is I'm building some of those cities. So color doesn't interfere with me building cities in China or Australia, or I helped rebuild St. Petersburg, etc. So we do have talent available. The next thing I'm going to say, very, very practical things. After 9/11, we started the Alliance because the state government and the federal government immediately set up what they call the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation. We started the Alliance. Those of you who read the newspaper saw in the New York Times, we had 7,000 New Yorkers replan Ground Zero, not that commission. 7,000 New Yorkers. All right? Now, I'm going to make a very practical suggestion here. The city council ought to set up a new commission, because without authority, you cannot be heard. The city council has not done that. They should do it. And have open meetings all over the United States. And bring in not just people from New Orleans, but people who have talent and credibility to hear what they have to say to rebuild New Orleans. That's a much bigger force. Much bigger force. All right? And maybe have your last meeting in the Superdome and use it for something decent. Now, the next practical solution. If people are going to get $25,000, now, I'm a developer. I know that for every dollar I can get in capital, I can get 10 more in debt. Now, if all those people getting $25,000 put them in one bank, one development institution, you could rebuild New York, let alone New Orleans. Third thing is, I would, as I did in Oakland, not allow the transfer of any land in the affected areas at all. That's the only moratorium I would have.
No transfer.
No transfer of land. Unless that land's being transferred to a 501c3 that is here in this city. Because if you cannot assemble land, you cannot assemble a future. Now, I would take the land and not the mule. I want them both. Because the mule's going to die. The land going to be here. And the Lord ain't making no more. All right? Now, these are very practical solutions. We did this in other locations. All right? The fourth is, someone mentioned bringing back the young people. Now, one of the things I've learned about the Chinese is Saturday school. Why don't we start Saturday schools, Reverend, in every one of your places, teaching these young people, using our people to teach them? Now, we got to assemble those people thinking they're going to come back. Saturday schools should both be for adults and children about the new New Orleans, and it should be every single Saturday. Now, that Saturday school, now I'm not in the church. I'm in the church of what is called economics. That Saturday school should be all economics. All economics. Because if people learn how the economics of land use, the economics of assembly of land, the economics of banking and capital, they'll own the people that want to own them. Now, that's the only kind of math that people need to be taught. Now, every one of those guys that we're talking about, the big riches, they know fractions because they can break some stuff down into micro centimeters and quarters and cents and charge dollars and quarter dollars on it in a millisecond. So can't tell me these guys don't know math. And I used to coach some of them in football, and we say the 72Z right up flow, they got it. So we have got to use this opportunity for Saturday school and economics that will also allow voter registration in those same schools and the like, and voter education, regardless of what party you're in. We've got to start neighborhood development 501c3s right now and register them in Louisiana right now. It only takes 3 people to do it. You don't have to have a president, a treasurer, and a secretary. Register them in Louisiana and get the papers now. Take those papers out now. Don't wait for somebody else. In each of the churches, you have 150 churches or something in the affected area. Each one of those churches have a 501c3 right now. Some of them have them. They should be operationalized, and they should get as many names on the list as possible and start the fundraising right now on those 501c3s. That's your only protection for the future. Final suggestion. The American Planning Association and the ULI have black members. American Planning Association has a black planners group nationwide. They are in all the affected cities. They can help you run your charrettes. They're willing, they're able, and I'll help you organize that. The Urban Land Institute has a guy named Irvin Magic Johnson who knows a little bit about how to do development. I am sure he and McFarland and others, these are billionaires, would be very helpful in rebuilding this city. So we don't have to build from the bottom of the deck. We can build from the top of the deck.
Thank you.
Well, I hope that one of the things that's coming through both to each other here as we talk, but to everybody out there, is that what we have tried to pull together here is that team that some of y'all missed the religious service last night, but Reverend Jemison talked about the team. And we're talking about putting that team together and how do we put our arms around each other with the kind of brilliance and the kind of talent that we all have as African people. In fact, Abel Mabel Thomas, I always go with her slogan. I've made it somewhat popular even beyond herself. We are the leaders we've been looking for. Everybody brings something to the table. I just wanted to uplift this one point, which I think Minister Robert, is it? The regional minister raised, that I think sometimes we overlook as we move forward. And also Gilbert raised it in terms of the internal contradictions. Because we often complain about they took over the school board. They took it over, all right? But what we often don't say to ourselves, honestly, is, I mean, funding and all that set aside, sometimes we have permitted some very incompetent, bankrupt, corrupt kinds of things to go on that we need to control. And I think moving forward, the quest for excellence, the demand that we're going to be the best that we can possibly be and hold ourselves accountable is an absolute fundamental axiom that we cannot overlook. We have got to do that. We've got to do that. So that's one of the things that I've been taking over, what I call the moral and ethical imperatives of leadership. You know, and I'm not trying to make us perfect, but I'm saying sometimes we cut ourselves too much slack. I think one of the biggest black-on-black crimes is black buffers who block progress. And so we're going to have to deal with that too.
Gilbert Parks, Dr. Parks, when I'm not doing anything else, and a cowboy, as this young lady said. But I should tell that story quick if we had time to tell it. But the thing I want to talk about most is the mental health piece is the most important piece. The physical piece, the rebuilding of the houses and all that stuff won't make any difference if we don't take care of our mental health. And that's for all of us. And I know that the strong of us think, because of the general unfortunate attitude of much of the black community, is that you have to be crazy to need mental health services. It's not a fact. And prevention is always better than an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. All of us has been traumatized by this event. One of the comments I made in Washington, which was most truthful, this is my first time to New Orleans. When this happened, I intentionally stayed in Kansas. Not because I didn't think some help was not needed here, but all the people that I work with in Kansas also needed help, because they experienced the trauma of seeing what happened. In addition to that, it is very true among black leaders. Black leaders need a lot of help dealing psychologically with seeing their people traumatized, because they take on a special role, a special responsibility, and a greater burden to protect and to provide. So when they feel the helplessness that comes in not being able to protect their people, there's an added sense of stress and distress that influence their functioning and behavior on a daily basis. So I want us to be very attuned to that, and don't wait until it gets to be disastrous personally before we take action to do something about it in every sense of the word. And this is something that should be true of all of us, because the most important thing for the stabilization
of a community and a nation of people is the sense of belonging. If you don't feel you belong, you don't belong. A sense of well-being is based on belonging. The second most important thing is a sense of feeling understood. If you don't feel understood by people, you don't feel whole and complete. And any trauma will dislodge that for anybody, whether it's a personal or collective trauma. The other one I would like to say to you very quickly, and then we'll expand it, is this. We all have experienced in this phenomenon here, the phenomena of disengagement or forced displacement. And in all of our psychic is a phenomenon of transgenerational displacement that goes back hundreds of years. And that was reawakened in us, whether in New Orleans or in New York or California or anywhere else. Unless we collectively understand that and deal with it, which we can, we're going to miss the point of the power in us to correct some things that has influenced our behavior and our doings. And I will say this last thing to you in this point around. I'm here to help with this kind of thinking. It's okay for me to talk about what other people do to us and all of that, but I'm never surprised when other people do certain things. That's what they're supposed to do. You see, but what we're supposed to do is the real issue here. I don't care how hard the wind blows. It depends on how strong the building is as the damage that's done. So when people talk about racist people and they in their own interest, they supposed to be in their own interest. But the real deal is for us to get stronger in our own interest. And that's the psychological issue that I want to say to you in the last bit here. And just closing this story is a personal matter. As a grandfather and a great lover of cowboys and cowgirls, I had a granddaughter the other day, 11 years old, get bucked off of her new horse. She raised him 3 years old now. We started riding, and the horse bucked off hard. And I'm thinking, oh my God, her mother, she was crying. Her mother, who is my daughter, can really give me a tongue lashing when I don't protect her baby. So I'm sitting there feeling real bad. I'm tearful almost. The baby think I'm thinking about her. I'm thinking about what my daughter gonna say to me. She cried a bit and rolled over, and I tried to help her up, and she said, I'll get up, Gilbert. I said, what we gonna do? She said, I'm gonna get back on her. You hear me? She said, I'm gonna get back on her. And got back on our horse and rode her the rest of the day. It wasn't about how hard she got bucked down. It's how soon she mustered inside and got back up. And it's with that kind of psychology that we can rely on each other. And she relied on me to support her, and that's what we're here to do, is support each other. Give us a sense of belonging. It don't make no difference how hard to buck or how hard you come down or what has happened. It depends on what we do here, there, and collectively across the nation. It will determine psychologically how well we rebuild the physical houses and the neighborhoods and etc. It's got to start in our heads, between our ears, for us to be one people forever, everywhere. We can do it.
First, brothers and sisters, let me say how honored I am to be here today with you. How honored I am to be a part of this panel with such brilliant minds, soulful people who love our people and want to see our people free. I thank God for the pastor who has opened this house to us. And I thank Brother Ron Daniels and the Institute of the Black World and Dr. Mthangalisi Sanyika for bringing us together for this moment in time. I want to be brief. because I have to be, because we have to be on the next part of this. I'm greatly inspired by what I saw. My minister here, Minister Willie, took me to all of the areas that I might see what I never thought existed. There's no way that I in Chicago and people in other cities really know what went on here. I brought the Final Call staff with me. May I stand, please?
Yes, sir.
I brought the Final Call staff with me with photographers and cameras because this story has to get out. I have heard that we are going to make a DVD, but we need to come back here, and we've agreed to do that for a week, to be guided by Mtangilisi Sanyika to all the areas that we may film, and we're bringing professional narrators. And we will spread this story not only throughout America, but the world must see what we have experienced. I personally want to thank everyone that spoke, because I was educated by coming, educated by listening, and I thank you for sharing your pain, but also your knowledge. I am so greatly encouraged and inspired by what I saw and what I heard that we must double our efforts.
Yes, sir. That's right.
When we go back home and listen and think over what Sister here charged us to do. It can and will be done. Now, the things that come to me, I just want to share them briefly with you, because we must not think that we are dependent on those that hate us to deliver us. We must depend on our Creator and on the intelligence and spirit and will that is among us to deliver us and our people. I made a scripture. There's a scripture from Isaiah the prophet that says, and we will rebuild the wasted cities. God, through Katrina, which was God-made and man-made, gave us an opportunity not only to unite the forces in this locale, but really black people in America feel this pain, and they've given us an opportunity to use Katrina and the victims of Katrina as the clarion call to unite a whole people to action. Now, I heard today that we need to call this a national emergency, a state of emergency, because we've been in a state of emergency ever since we've been here. Dr. Colon, I am so grateful for your scholarship, what you do, and our brother here, Dr. Blakely, and for our great psychiatrist here. I mean, the things that you all have said have been so magnificent. I would just like to crystallize it with these words. You cannot reconstruct the city until we are reconstructed. We are a damaged people that have never been properly served to reconstruct us as human beings. The churches, the mosques, the synagogues, the institutions that shepherd our lives are the potters that have formed us the way we are. New Orleans is a city that reflects the sickness of what white supremacy has done. A section of town for the Creoles. And if you can't pass the brown bag test, how in the hell can we build on that kind of garbage of self-hatred? So there must be a reconstruction of our minds. Then nothing is impossible. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to me, when Almighty God created this universe out of nothing, He destroyed the impossible. So we have the capability to do exactly what needs to be done if we do here what must be done to put us in the right state. That's why I said last night, the team, we are a team, but we are filled with the same sicknesses of our people. And if we are going to be an effective team, then we too must undergo the psychological rebuilding, the spiritual rebuilding. When I learned physics, I learned that there were 15 pounds of pressure on every square inch of our bodies, that you don't feel that pressure because your intake of oxygen is what balances the pressure that we constantly labor under. There was a can, or rather two hemispheres, that the oxygen in the hemisphere was extracted, and horses were put on both sides of that hemisphere and could not pull it apart because the external pressure was greater than the horsepower to pull it apart. What am I saying? See, no, what I'm saying is we are collapsing as a people mentally because we lack the requisite knowledge to balance the pressure that we as a people are under. And that is why the scripture says, my people are destroyed for the lack of the requisite knowledge. We all got some knowledge, but it isn't worth nothing if it's not the right knowledge to confront the situation that we find ourselves in. And what is that right knowledge? They never gave it to you at Harvard, or Yale, or at Dillard, or at Xavier, because these schools were set up to make you servants of this structure, not able to build a structure of your own.
Absolutely.
So, excuse me, I'm passionate because of what I saw. I hardly can contain myself. I had tears in my eyes when I spoke to the woman who was there with SBA, because evidently she didn't have insurance, and she's trying to get a loan to do something with her house. And when I talked to her, I couldn't talk anymore because I was emotionally overcome, like my brother Leonard Dunstan. My dear brother, Dr. Cologne, You mentioned that the question was what to do with us. And the answer is destroy us. That's the intention of the government of the United States of America, where black and poor people are concerned. Now, this may sound crazy to you, but you are in the process right now of being destroyed. You haven't hit the ground yet, but you're almost there. It's written in the scriptures. They saw the multiplication of the children of Israel. It's your numbers that made you a black male over white circumstance. Get rid of the numbers. Get rid of the people that trouble us. They don't intend to educate us. Where's my educator, Sister McAfee? They don't have no intention to educate you beyond the ability to serve them. Brother said he traveled in the Caribbean, 19 countries. The Caribbean right now is absolutely under a technique of social engineering that the people of the Caribbean will only be servants for white and black people who want to come there as tourists. But there is no opportunity for them to be educated and exploit that education through industry. So they said, let's deal wisely with them, lest they join on to an enemy of ours and come against us. How do they mean deal wisely with them? They said they planned to kill all the boy babies and spare the female. That's why you are called bootylicious, because that to them is all you're good for. But your black men are right now a vanishing people. See? So this effort to reconstruct, to carry our story, to bring the children home, to do what brother said in the neighborhood, we learn through example, not through rote. Who will stand and be the type of man that inspires young men to be men? There's a lion asleep in Judah acting like a pussycat. How can a pussycat meowing bring out the lion in the nature of the black man? So if we're not going to be the men, then they're going to sit down. And if you're not willing to offer your life to see our people rise, then get out the way, because it will demand our lives to resurrect our people. So that's all I have to say. I leave you with this hope. The Bible in the book of Genesis says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And God said, let there be light. I don't care how dark the situation is. Light is always present in the darkness, because if God brought light out of darkness, then there is no darkness where the presence of light does not exist. But when you're hopeless, when you're filled with despair, and you have gloom over you because you feel oppressed, suppressed, then you can't find the light. There's a people that walk in darkness, but they have seen a great light. A great light upon them has shined. This is our opportunity, New Orleans. God has given us through a negative to produce positive for us and all our people. May God bless us, strengthen us, encourage us. May he increase our faith, not only in him, but our faith in what he has put in us, that we can rebuild, we will rebuild. And the first part of that is it starts with you individually reconstructing self. Thank you, Dr. Mtangilisi. Thank you, every one of the panelists. Thank you for educating me today. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mr. Louis Farrakhan.